Looking at the schedule, who, besides Texas, of course, obviously they're a big favorite this year, but who's the biggest matchup? And not necessarily even in terms of like rivalry. I just mean like a measuring stick for OU, if you will. Like, how are they doing?
Well, I think Michigan early on is going to be a good test for the offensive line because even though Michigan lost a lot of NFL talent on their defensive line, if they've recruited well at any place, it's the line of scrimmage. And just remembering where OU's offensive line was last year, especially where it started, even against Temple, where they had so many guys that were hurt that one their starting center gets hurt in the game, and so they have to put out someone who had a broken hand. They had no options. And so they didn't do themselves any favors, but they were also unfortunate. They're starting from a much better place right now than they did last year, but it's still nowhere near when you think of Bill Beanbo run Oklahoma offensive line, it's nowhere near that. It has the capability to play itself up to that standpoint, but they've got a big test early on against Michigan. If they can answer that test, they've got something cooking with the offensive line, and they're going to be looking at a five-star offensive tackle by the name of Michael Fasusi, who, by all reports, the recruiting hype was warranted. He seems to be that dude. And if you see OU trotting out a true freshman at left tackle, just remember it's not because of necessity or panic. It's because he's that good. So OU has the capability to have a good offensive line this year, and they can at least start the process of proving it against Michigan. And I think, in a weird way, I think the South Carolina game will tell us a lot about where this team is. To me, that's the compass game for this team, because I think that there is a strong likelihood that they could be undefeated going into the Cotton Bowl, and that would mean that they beat Michigan at home and Auburn at home. It's those are still two tall tasks, but they beat Auburn last year, and they get Michigan at home with likely a true freshman making his first road start. So against Brent Venables, you like those advantages. If they go into the Cotton Bowl undefeated, all bets are off at the very least. And I hate saying this as an OU guy, but at the very, very least, retain your honor and play a competitive game. And then, we'll go from there.
Right.
But under Brent Venables, the biggest problem, and there have been many, but one of the biggest problems has been maintaining focus. Because if you guys remember in 2023, they're undefeated. They go play Texas in the Cotton Bowl and they win. And then they kind of skyrocket from 10 or 9 in the polls to top 5. And Dylan Gabriel is like leading the Heisman race at that point early on in the year. And then they play UCF in Norman, and it took a defended 2-point conversion at the end of the game to beat them. And then they went on the road for 2 weeks, once against Kansas in Lawrence and once against Oklahoma State in Stillwater. Now, Kansas and Oklahoma State that year, they were top 25 teams. Oklahoma State played in the Big 12 title game. Kansas was a top 20 team, I think, that year. But OU lost those games in large part because they looked completely and utterly different in those games than they did prior to and during the Texas game, because they hit the pinnacle and they weren't able to maintain it with Brent Venables. So win or lose in the Cotton Bowl, let's say that they, because I know everyone wants to praise Arch Manning right now, but so I won't rain on anyone's parade. Let's pretend that he's as good as everyone thinks he is. Okay, OU likely loses the game in the Cotton Bowl. Let's say they lose 35-24. It's like, okay, competitive game, good moments, bad moments. Texas just had a better quarterback and better team. It's okay. Go on the road and win, though. If you want to have a good season, if you want to maintain your status as the head coach at OU, you go on the road and you beat South Carolina. Because, again, I know that they're good. Lenora Sellers is good. They were an exciting team last year, but there's a reason why people thought Shane Beamer was about to get fired if that little lucky streak that they had didn't just randomly occur. And credit to them, like, they earned it. But that type of luck doesn't really carry over from year to year. We see lucky teams every single year, and it
Right.
doesn't really carry over into the next season. So regardless of how good South Carolina, of how good they are or aren't, you need to go on the road and win that game, because it's not getting any easier. If you can't win in Columbia, why do you think you can go win in Knoxville? Why do you think you can go win in Tuscaloosa? So if they want to have an 8-4, 9-3, or even better season, you need to go win that game on the road in Columbia.